Hello and welcome to Dreamloop DeVlogs. This week I'm sitting here with Tommi and Ville and Kimmo. And my name is Matias, and we had a discussion earlier about games becoming a little too easy already. And this was inspired by an article in Kotaku, and we're going to link it in the description so you can read it for yourself. And it sparked quite a discussion with me and Ville earlier, and we're going to open it up a little bit with Tommi and Kimmo here as well. And the premise is that some modern games have the tendency of giving the player instructions before it's due. Like a player, for example, faces an obstacle and they're already being told how to jump over it or crouch under it, whatever it is, before the player even has an opportunity to think for themselves or try using some buttons on the controller. And that actually kind of triggers me a little personally. I do not like being like having the challenge taken away from me before it's even before I had a chance to really like process it myself. So what do you guys feel about that?
Like one thing we talked about already before was like why this resonated with me, even though it's a Kotaku article, sick burns. Why it resonated with me was because we sort of had the same thing with Stardust Galaxy Warriors, because we've had both people who don't ever use their melee attacks, and we've had people who only use melee and don't use their ranged weapons because they are not trying all the controls in the controller, even though we even show like a diagram where it shows where all the buttons are. And this is really weird because as a kid, like you would always, on the Super Nintendo or whatever, you would always try every button. And what does this do? But these days people don't.
We have two buttons there.
Yeah, well, yeah, true. But Super Nintendo had a little bit more. And even after that, you would always try every button. What does this do? And like you would think that's really the core of it. You would think, hey, am I missing something? And I think that's sort of like I would challenge like Matias said, games are being made too easy. I wouldn't necessarily say that because that's a little bit too broad. I would say that the games think that players are idiots. Like I think that's the thing. And then players sort of become idiots because games are treating them as such.
Mm-hmm.
Like people
essentially.
don't. Yeah, the games.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That games probably aren't too easy, but there's too much hand-holding going on in a lot of games nowadays. And I think on PC, for example, since there's like a million buttons, it's I think it's unreasonable to ask the player to try each and every one of them. But for example, on a console, every button is like you have a finger on almost all the buttons all the time. So at least for myself, I always try like, okay, so what does this do? What does this do?
And in general, most games have remappable controls. So for example, in the case of Stardust Galaxy Warriors, it has a goddamn diagram that shows you, hey, these are the buttons. You would at least try all of those. But that's the thing, that involves having to take an active role as a player, like making decisions, thinking, do I want to try, what does this do, And that's really where our conversation previously sort of, the direction we went was that games are now being made for sort of two different audiences. There's the traditional gamer audience, so to speak, where all this applies. That's all of us. That's the audience where you want to try every single button. You want to think. You want to figure out, what do I do? You're prompted. Enemies attack you. You're like, which weapon do I use? Do I dodge? Stuff like that. Then there's a new audience which essentially wants interactive movies. They don't want necessarily to have to think. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Like we talked about this right before this, is that there's a lot of people who, for example, their most of their media consumption is TV, and they're just sitting down, you're passively looking at stuff, and that's if you like that, that's fine and all that. But when that is brought into gaming, where we make games for people who do not want to make decisions, who don't want to think, they just want to consume the experience, but they still want this feeling of I'm in there. I'm deciding things, and then from that you start getting things like quick time events, and you start getting things like everything is super hand-holdy, stuff like that. So,
do you think that might be because, for example, for all of us, we've played games for such a long time that if someone puts a controller in your hand, you know exactly how to hold it, and you know almost what each button will do in each game, even though you have never played it before. And then there's those gamers, like new gamers, who are given the controller for the first time, like they're given, okay, so how do you hold this thing, and okay, so what does this do, and yeah. do you think that's something that's contributing to this?
Yeah, it's weird. I can't remember like first times I played console games. Was I like, did I need instructions, or I can't remember at all how it was like that then. But of course nowadays we all play so many games that we know, okay, X most likely will. Well, this is a PlayStation 4 controller, so X will most likely jump, for example, and left stick will move, and it's like you just know those things. So maybe that's why it's so annoying to see all the prompts.
Actually, this brought an article to mind, or an old review. I think it was Alien versus Predator.
Mm-hmm.
In a review, they said that most scary thing in this game is that with the left thumbstick you actually move around and strafe, and with the right one you can actually control the camera. And this was in, what was this, like 2000 or something?
Something like that.
So that was like one of the first games that had that's now like very much a default setting, that with the left one you move and with the right one you move the camera, and that was like one of the first games that used that. And here we are now. It's like in every game.
Standard.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are like there is a culture, and the gamers have become used to things like the left stick being the one that moves your character. But even those things, they still change somewhat over time, and like when you come to a new game, you still have to kind of go over some things.
Yeah, and it's not even that. It's not just a physical act of controlling the game. It's the mindset. It's like, what are you seeking? Are you naturally curious? Are you looking to challenge the game in some ways? Are you trying to look at creative ways to do things, or are you just there for the ride?
Yeah.
So I would argue that this exact same problem would exist, like regardless of what the controllers are or whatever, because there's simply people who look for different things in games. But we are maybe as an industry not acknowledging that. Like, people are making games for the, how do you say it, walking simulator audience or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's really cool. But the problem is that when marketing people start going like, hey, there's this new audience and we have to make games for as many people as possible, and they start gunning for both audiences. So at the same time, you even have games, installments of a series where they used to be traditional games, so to speak, but now they are being made for the audience that doesn't want to be too actively involved in the experience. They just wanna, it's like a roller coaster ride, or occasionally you get to decide which way you go. Which is a good way of putting it, because I mean that would be dope as fuck. Like in an amusement park. So I can totally understand where those people are going from, because they're coming from movies and TV series, and they just want that little extra bit of like, I get to choose.
Yeah, maybe the biggest problem here then is that they are labeled as games.
Yeah.
Everything is just under games. You see in Steam, it's all in the same place. I don't think they have any. Well, they have tags and everything, but they are all in there.
Yeah,
It's like one entry is a game, then one entry is, for example, Dear Esther, which is not a game.
I mean, like that's the thing. Like in some ways, it is a game, but it's not a game, for example, for an audience that expects to be challenged, that expects to. And I mean, and there is a difficult example in a sense that you could argue that, for example, you can be curious in that game. You can go around, you can look at details, stuff like that. You can say that there, but it's not that in a traditional sense. So if it was a whatever interactive movie, if it was made for that audience, for them maybe it has even too much involvement. So it's a bit interesting of a corner scenario, because it's sort of, I mean, it's an art game, but like, this whole thing, and this is even problematic in the sense that it's not just problematic for the consumer, as I said previously. It's problematic for example, trivialized studios, because you have this pressure to at the same time make, say, a first-person shooter, but then also make it for people who want to play it for the experience. This sort of ties into something we discussed previously about how everybody needs to be a winner, so to speak, and everybody needs to be able to beat the game. And some of this, I think, stems from that a lot of these people who want just the experience. They want to experience the whole thing. They don't want to get stuck. Yeah. So you have to make it easy enough for them. But then that leaks everywhere. You were talking about, for example, your experiences.
Yeah, I was talking about Gran Turismo, and I remember as a kid playing like maybe the second installment of the series, and I spent hours and hours doing license tests, which are these short tests that you have to master a part of track with a with a certain car and reach a time limit to get either a gold or a silver or a bronze medal, or a trophy or whatever. And it used to be so that it was super difficult, and it took hours for me to obtain the gold like the gold master of the license test. And now I've been playing the GT Sport, which released like a month ago or so, and I've been like I could do the license goals in like with my left hand only and my eyes closed. it's like there's no challenge for me anymore. Of course, I've become better at racing games in the meantime, but I don't think I've become that much better. So that's just one example, but I've seen it in other games as well.
I mean, that's like a very, it's a competitive game and it's a very skill intensive game, so to speak, so there it's more clear. But I think this also applies to single player games where the player has to be able to experience the entire story without getting frustrated. It's story first. It's, you get like people say from, and this is a little bit of hyperbole, but but not really, you get people from say Hollywood coming into game production, and they're like writing a script and this is the story, this is exactly how it goes, and the players have to be able to experience it that way. Oh yeah, you can sprinkle a little bit gameplay here and there, but like it's essentially on rails.
Yeah, of course there's a thing that if your game is frustrating, then the players will stop playing it. Yeah. And of course you want to keep players playing your game as long as you can. And of course, as a story writer, you would want people to experience the whole story instead of like half of it.
But that's the thing though, because will people stop playing it if they're frustrated? Because there's so many people who are fueled by that. It's like, for me at least, that's what creates the accomplishment.
Exactly.
Because I know it's difficult. I get my ass kicked.
You mean the pride and accomplishment?
Yeah, oh yeah, my pride, pride and accomplishment, yeah, exactly. Like that's where you used to get it from back in the day. That's where you can still get it these days if you play difficult games. Yeah. And then another point is also in regards to storytelling. Storytelling doesn't have to be linear. Storytelling doesn't even have to be like, this is the story, it's like this straight path from the beginning to the end, and you experience it, walking through, or maybe not even walking to escalator, you just pull through it at a static rate.
For me personally, like I get frustrated with a single player story-driven game if it's like if it doesn't have any friction at all. If it's too easy to just breeze through, I get frustrated because I can't seem to grasp anything within the gameplay. And like let's say Assassin's Creed games, at least the newer ones, like if I wanted to go through a story like that, I mean the premise seems pretty cool to me, but like where's the most of the challenge in those games? Like if I wanted to play a story like that, what other game could I choose? Like there's nothing like that out there, at least not in the AAA tier. Sorry about that, folks. Our camera literally stopped filming us, I guess it got bored of us calling new games dumbed down. But anyway, what do you think? Do you think new games are actually being made a little too easy, too dumbed down, or do you think it's a matter of choosing the right target audience? It's an important thing, so let us know in the comments if you have an opinion on that. So I wanted to basically just end this video on a higher note than that, so here it is. And take care, see you next episode.